been a year, 3 months, and a week since I found this forge. I still feel like a guest here, like one day the true owner will return, step through that door, and tell me to leave, to freeze outside in the crippled cold. The last owner was a genius, or a madman. He left behind a bronze bird that spits fire at insects, a rusted humanoid that wanders the forest for days and returns with scrap, and a one-eared mechanical dog that waits by the door like it still remembers its master. They work, they function, but they do not speak, and neither do I. This place isn't mine. It's a machine that hasn't decided whether to keep me or kill me. And now, there's a woman dying in my bed. There is nothing scarier than a fading life. Not monsters, not the cold, not even the silence pressing in from the forest beyond these walls. A life slipping. I sat at the edge of my bed and watched a stranger struggle to breathe. Her ribs pressed sharply against skin so thin it looked borrowed. Each inhale was shallow, hesitant, as though her body was reconsidering the effort. The exhale trembled out slowly, fragile and uncertain. Then it paused. Too long, before returning weaker. My hands rested on my knees, fingers curling against worn fabric. I leaned closer, studying the rise and fall of her chest with the same intensity I would give a broken mechanism. But she wasn't metal. Metal makes sense. Pressure creates movement. Heat creates change. Steel bends when flame allows it. Flesh is chaos. The worst illness I've ever endured was a common cold, a nuisance solved with tea and sleep. This was something deeper, something draining. When I carried her inside, her skin had been cold, not the surface chill of winter wind, a hollow cold, the kind that begins beneath bone. A draft slipped through the cabin and brushed against my neck. Instinctively, I stood and crossed to the furnace. Logs, airflow, pressure valve. The forge responded instantly, roaring brighter as flame devoured wood. Heat swelled through the room. Still, she shivered. And for the first time since I found this place, I felt utterly useless. I paced. 30 minutes of feeding the furnace, adjusting blankets, checking her pulse, just listening. Her heartbeat was there, weak, uneven, but there. Every time I touched her wrist, I felt the bones shift beneath skin too thin to protect them. My jaw tightened. Clang! The sound echoed from outside, metal striking the collection trough. I froze. The scrap collector had returned. Of course it had. The rusted humanoid never failed its path. It wandered the forest for hours, dragging broken fragments of this strange world back to the forge as if still obeying commands long after its master disappeared. Predictable. Reliable. Unlike this. If I ignored the furnace, pressure might spike. A valve could rupture. Fire spreads quickly in wooden structures. I looked at her again. Her lips carried the faintest hint of blue. "Don't you dare," I muttered. Preparation steadied me. Adjusting the furnace to burn low, moving her to lay beside it and feeding her what was really filtered melted snow. Scarf tightened. Goggles secured. Staff extended to full length. Spear locked into position with a metallic click. The rituals of function. If I moved quickly, I could retrieve whatever food I could and return before her condition worsened. That was logical. Logic is safe. I opened the door. The wind struck immediately, sharp and merciless. Snow stretched across the forest in pale stillness. No birds, no movement, only skeletal trees clawing at a gray sky. The cold bit through fabric and into muscle. I stepped forward anyway, because I had to. The forest was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Even in winter, something moves. A branch shifting, snow falling from a limb, the distant crack of ice adjusting. Today, nothing. My boots pressed into hardened snow as I followed the collector's usual path, past the frozen stream, past the leaning pine that marked the halfway point. Her ribs had creaked when she shivered. That sound followed me. I walked farther than I should have, further than logic allowed. I can handle this, I told myself. I have tools. I have training. Then I saw it. Blood. Dark against white snow. Fresh, not frozen. My breath stalled.
Somebody! Anyone! Please help us!
The scream tore through the forest. Wood splintered violently. Another scream. Cut short. Adrenaline erased the cold. I ran. Branches clawed at my coat. My lungs burned. The staff in my hand felt suddenly too light. I broke through the tree line and into a clearing, and saw it. The Babinski. Massive. Muscled. Its matted mane soaked in blood. It had lifted a merchant off the ground and was tearing into him with brutal, deliberate strength. Another body lay crumpled nearby. The creature turned its head slowly. Green eyes locked onto mine. Intelligent. Hungry. It dropped the corpse and stepped toward me. I screamed and we charged towards each other. I drove the spear forward when it lunged, vaulting its weight against the spear that slammed into the ground. The blade struck beneath its arm. Resistance. Then heat. Blood sprayed across my gloves, hot enough to steam in the cold air. The Babinski shrieked, a sound that vibrated through bone. Its arm swung blindly. The world flipped. Tree bark collided with my skull. Light burst behind my eyes. Snow swallowed my back as I hit the ground. By the time I forced myself upright, it had bent and ripped half of the spear free. It charged with a limp in its gait, its baboon-like face screeching with anger as it closed in. "Move, Freeder," I painfully growled. I rolled just as claws tore through snow where my head had been. Pain exploded through my side as something seized my leg, lifted, then threw me. The sky spun violently before I was hurled again, crashing through dead branches and splintered wood. Breathing became a struggle. When I came to, the Babinski climbed a tree with terrifying ease. It leapt. I rolled instinctively. The impact shattered wood beside me. My hand struck something solid. A broken plank, rusted nail protruding. It roared and lunged again. I swung upward with everything I had left. The nail pierced its eye. A wet, tearing sound. It screamed, high and enraged, thrashing violently. I didn't stop. Again, again, again. Even as it ripped the plank away, I was in a rage, screaming back and grabbing what remained of my spear in its body, twisted and yanked, stabbing blindly through it all. Again. Again, again, until the screaming faded into choking gurgles, until its weight collapsed into the snow. Silence returned. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My breath tore from my lungs in ragged bursts. My ears rang with a high, distant whine. My side throbbed in slow, pulsing waves that made the world tilt. The Babinski lay motionless in the snow, Steam rose from its ruined eye. I should drag it back. The hide would be useful. The bones, cleaner still. That was the kind of thought I was used to having. Practical, efficient, detached. I pushed myself onto my knees and nearly collapsed again. The merchants' bodies lay twisted beyond saving. The snow around them had already begun to drink what remained. There was nothing I could do for them. But her. I saw her the moment I closed my eyes. The stranger in my bed. The shallow breaths. The way her hand had twitched once, weakly, as if reaching for something that wasn't there. I told myself I went out just to feed her. For humanity. Because it was the right thing to do. That was the logical answer. It was also a lie. The truth was harder to swallow. For a year, 3 months, and a week, I have spoken to no one. The bronze bird clicks when it moves. The collector drags metal across stone. The one-eared mechanical dog sits by the door and waits for a master who is never coming back. They function. They obey. They do not answer. The forge roars, but it does not respond. Winter presses against the cabin walls, but it does not care. Days pass in repetition. Repair, maintenance, survival. I eat, I work, I sleep. And sometimes, in the deepest part of night, I forget the sound of another human voice. When I saw being dragged in and dumped onto the floor, something in me reacted before logic could. Just the sight. It filled me. Not mercy, not heroism. Something simpler. Hope. Hope that the silence might break. Hope that someone might speak. Hope that this place, this endless white prison, might hold more than machines and memory. I was reckless because if she died, then nothing would change. And I would return to the forge, to the bird, to the dog, to the collector, to the endless quiet. The cold crept through my soaked clothes, wrapping around my spine. If I died here, she would follow, and the silence would remain unbroken. My vision blurred. Snow gathered against my cheek. Above me, the branches swayed gently in a wind I could no longer feel. Somewhere beyond the tree line, something moved, watching, waiting. And I realized, just before darkness swallowed me, I do not want to be alone anymore. I don't want to die here. Not after accomplishing nothing at all.